Hi, my name is Jim Hilborn,
And I'm Tom Dinas.
and we
are the
small business doctors.
And I've been taking care of business every day. Taking care of business every way. I've been taking care of business. It's all mine. Taking care of business and working overtime.
My name is Tom Dinas, and I'm here with Jim Hilborn.
Hiya.
And we're going to be talking about problems during retirement.
Yes, problem during retirement.
Yeah, I just lost the bet to Jim starting the filming, and so I'm $25 short, and I'm trying to figure out how to make this
That's
up.
right, exactly.
So this is not looking good already.
No, it's not.
And unfortunately, that's a lot of things that's happening with people's retirement. Okay, we've got problems. Social Security has issues. It's in trouble.
Medicare,
Medicare, Medicaid big.
big time.
All the pension plans, or most of them, are underfunded and are in shortfalls and problems and
Union pension plans are
Oh, yeah.
terrifically underfunded.
yeah. The dollar is under attack worldwide. It has problems. which
Talk
could
that it
co-
might even not be the worldwide currency anymore.
And when that happens, then we've got bigger problems, which includes energy costs will probably go up and all sorts of nasty ramifications. Probably everybody's portfolio out there, with the exception of a few, has taken severe losses in the last couple of years.
Oh, I
and
think
has recovered some, but still hasn't been up there. And then the number one investment of all middle-class Americans
Real estate,
is taking it in the shorts here.
right.
So, everybody's got troubles.
Troubles. That's it.
When anybody knows the name of that
That
song,
song.
get it to me because it's driving me nuts. And so, when you look at all this out there, one has to ask himself, maybe I should have a plan B.
Well, you should have a plan B. You should always have a plan B. And the question is now, if you absolutely know that you're never going to need any outside in cash, okay.
Capital of some sort.
Good
yeah.
for you. Good for you. God bless you, man. You've made it. But
I don't know anybody like that
I don't
personally.
know too many people
Yeah.
like that either, and particularly the small business people, that want to step down. And because in small business, I think particularly we know that the world is an uncertain place.
And then in recent times have proved us to be incredibly correct on that.
Yeah.
Even in the best of times, it's uncertain.
Yes.
And now it's just been gone on steroids as far as uncertainty.
Oh yeah.
As far as where
Exactly.
we're at.
This reminds me, this is the year we're making this film in the year 2011, July 2011, and I can't remember a more uncertain. I'm 62, and it's really today's world reminds me of the stories my grandmother told me about the Great Depression.
Oh God, the Depression stories.
Yeah.
Yes,
Are those
I-
great stories.
Great stories, yes.
And
yes.
sadly, I always thought, oh well, that's ancient history.
My grandfather carrying scrap woods from his workplace on his back on the streetcar coming home from work.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
To heat the stove. Yeah.
Heat the
Yeah.
stove, cook with, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
My mother eating onion sandwiches.
And putting lard on the bread and salting it instead of butter. That was my mother's favorite.
Exactly.
Anyway, we could go on and on
We
about
could.
that.
We could.
but-
I still remember those
yeah.
stories. Good stories. But what we want to do is we want to talk about. Okay, so what is your plan?
Okay.
What are you going to do?
Well, as with all things when it comes to finances, you only have two choices. Either you reduce expenses, so let's look at that. And a lot of
Okay.
people refuse to take a reduction in lifestyle. They develop a sense of entitlement.
And we talked about that before. That most retirees, the big problem with retirees.
Yeah.
Not that there's a big problem with retirees as such, but everybody
Except
sort of
they're
thinks,
old.
oh,
Yeah.
we're going to reduce our lifestyle when we retire, and so this will be enough money, and you don't.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
As been pointed out time and time again, the day you retire, what happens to your bills? Just because you magically turn a certain age, The house payment's still going on. Very few people have their houses paid off anymore. Your utility bills are the same, probably going up because you need to keep the house a little warmer. Yeah.
Keeping up with inflation, that's for sure.
Just keeping up inflation. And people say, well, all my investments, my retirement stuff is COLA, it's cost of living adjustments. The problem with that is the government has cooked the books.
That's exactly
There
right.
are two inflation rates. One is the federally approved one, in which they remove what they call the volatile items.
Volatile,
Volatile because they're
because they go up and down.
mostly go up too much. And that's
right.
That's the problem for the government. And the two biggies are energy and food.
But those we do need that. Oh,
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. So anyway, when
and
you
by
remove
fuel,
those two,
by fuel, we're not talking about necessarily the fuel you put in your car to go to back and forth to work, because you're not going to be doing that. We're talking about that stuff they burn to make electricity.
yeah, all sorts of fuel. So when you look at that inflation rate, the one that's going to increase the amount of pension you get, the amount of Social Security benefits you get, is at basically a understated amount. The true inflation rate, they've been posting somewhere around 3%, 3.5%. The actual rate, and you can talk to any person who's an astute grocery shopper will tell you that that's all horse pucky.
That's right.
And the rate is closer to 6% when you bring fuel and food into it. And food is, such a large component of food is related to energy to begin with. So by throwing out energy, you really are unnaturally skewing that factor that's your
right.
livelihood depends upon when
That's
you're
right.
retired. So what you do is you look at your lifestyle and say, and what I tell people, you need to change your lifestyle before your lifestyle forces you to change.
Exactly.
Because then you're doing it out of strength, you have a plan, you can get things, you can turn out a lot better on it. And it's amazing. I always recommend to all my clients now a book that I read that impacted my life, and it's called A Reasonable Life.
A Reasonable Life.
A Reasonable Life. I forget the author, I apologize. But his whole philosophy was that as soon as you start getting a little extra money, you start buying bigger things, more expensive cars, bigger house. That's the whole deal. Everybody does that. But why? Why do you spend your life working for something that's inanimate like a house? After it meets your basic living needs, there's no reason to get anything larger. You have to pay property tax on it. I have clients now paying $16,000 and $18,000 a year in property taxes on
Isn't
a
that
house.
crazy? Isn't that just crazy?
My brother is one of them, and he says, well, they shovel the snow off the sidewalks in the wintertime. And I go, I'll do that for $5,000. I'll fly out to Detroit and take care of your sidewalks.
Who's that bald head man? That's my brother. Yeah.
Picking up a little loose change. But if you look at you can do quite nicely, and all of a sudden, and my personal experience is large houses are just a vortex of extra work in life. Large lots are black hole of extra work. It just sucks away your life force because you got all the stuff due to your stuff. You don't have time to enjoy the things that you might really want to do. Now, some people might like
That's
getting
right.
up on a ladder and painting a house. I am not one of them.
Yeah, but you do it. See,
Right.
but there are people, let's face it, Tom, who really do like to garden. And that's an important part of what we're talking about, is understanding what is it that I really like to do, how I really like to spend my time,
Right.
what is important to me.
Right.
So if you've got the kids, out of the house.
Yeah. Do you need a
maybe-
3,500 square foot house?
Right, exactly.
No.
So, or what do I need now? If that's just the most important thing to you in the whole wide world, and that's what makes you happy, well, far be it for me to
Right.
judge you. But if that house is suddenly, if you feel like you're a little overhoused, and here in 2011 you don't want to sell now, maybe, but at the same time you want to be thinking about you were building this equity in this house for retirement.
Right. I remember one of my clients came in, and one of the greatest lines I've heard from a client. And I said, well, why are you selling your house? He says, well, our dream house turned into a nightmare.
Exactly.
He wanted to do other things, and so did she, and they were spending all their time on the house,
Right.
cleaning it, fixing it, and so, these are the things you have to sit down, you and your husband, and talk it out and see what your true goals are. You know, especially since the husband's you are going to be home a lot more because you're
You're gonna be
retired.
together. You're
You
gonna be together.
Probably need to going to get to know each other on a whole different level than you ever have in your
Yeah,
life.
as you slowly changed over the years, and now you're going to be, you spend a lot of time together, and then life made you into slightly different people, and now you're going to be together a lot.
Now, one thing about the big homes, as I'm seeing this, and you're probably seeing it with your clients, is kids are returning home at ages that was unheard of in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s.
Yeah, you got to rekey the lock. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, and the problems are coming with the grandkids.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
that's it. Well, you can let the
Mom
grandkids
ain't-
in,
Mom ain't
but
gonna turn the grandkids away. I'm sorry.
yeah,
you know,
no,
they're
never
all
going to
gonna
happen.
come in.
That's right.
So that can be a consideration, but then you're going back to an extended family life,
That
which
can
be,
work.
that can work. It worked for generations and generations, and it's only been in the last 40 years
Right.
that has gone away. So
But you can't fund the unemployment of your children without, if you start, you're going to notice that they're going to start, your retirement is going to start heading that way.
yeah, then you're all without money, and
That's
so-
right.
So you get into that lifeboat scenario. We only have enough food for 12 passengers for
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
get back to shore, or 5 days, and then we all die.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
some tough choices. So, but if you start on the stuff early, you can do a controlled burn and maybe avoid a lot of these pitfalls. Another thing I suggest to clients is become more community involved.
Yeah.
Because if you have a sense of community, and if you have where you interact with people and you support each other in the community, your quality of life is better, for one.
Oh,
And two, and I think your cost of living goes down. You don't need as many police. You don't need as many services. You get a lot more things done because people do things as a community. You look at like the Amish communities and such, where
well,
they
it'll
all
fill your
get
time.
together.
It'll fill your time, and
Yes.
it'll fill your time in a very productive way.
Inexpensive way.
That'll
Yeah.
make you feel good
Cheap.
about yourself. That's right. And,
How much is a round of golf these
yeah,
days?
the more I got involved in my community, they pretty much voted me off the island.
Yeah, they figured out a way to get rid of you. Oh, well, yeah, there goes that idea. Maybe we'll
Okay,
switch
it's
to
not-
another.
It's not for everybody, okay? But
And one of the things when you're looking at your living situation is you need to live close to your needs.
Right.
I have friends, and they live out in the rural parts, and so all of a sudden in order to get even the basic groceries, they're looking at 15 miles, 20 miles up and back to do just basic. Well, I couldn't do it because when I do a project, I go to the hardware store 4 or 5 times
Right.
on one project.
so you're a day shopper.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what city people do. They shop daily.
Yeah, I go on the European model. I shop for every meal because I
Yeah.
live right across the street from a grocery
Grocery store. Well, that's right.
So
why not?
Why would I stock up on anything?
Exactly.
They have everything I need. So that's another consideration to have. And also you'd be less using the car. You can bicycle, you can walk. Your health improve, and you'll spend a lot less money. So.
Yeah. Now, there are those people who simply are not. This is not going to apply to everybody because
Right.
some of us can't.
Right.
And that's okay, but we're just throwing this out as a kind of a general idea.
Yeah, just to get you thinking in those areas.
And the other thing about it is that, this is so simple-minded, I know everybody does it anyway, but sometimes if you just consciously think about it, you'll find maybe there is a little bit of room here to, I'm not going to make 10 trips in the car, I'm going to make one, and I'm going to have a list, and I'm going to do it. So be organize, and you can be economize and organize, the same word in a lot of ways.
That leaves me out. I'm
Yeah,
never
well, I
very
know.
good at fireworks.
Well, see, you live across the street from the store, so
So what do I got to
care?
do? Another thing is just gardening and general economizing.
Yeah.
Supplementing some of the costs. And a lot of people get to love gardening. I even have an herb garden myself. A city boy like me growing up in Chicago. It's kind of fun to watch. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I know you got the Oregon herb garden. Okay.
All right,
no
let's
more.
go to the other side
Let's
of
say
the
no more about
equation
it. Okay,
after that. All right, if we can't cut it any closer on the spending end, what is our option?
That's right. And the other side is if you can't cut spending, you increase revenue.
Correcto mando. You actually read that line this
Well,
time.
I can't work like
I
this
know,
forever.
yeah.
But yeah, so, and we talked about this before. One of the topics that we wanted to explore a little bit is how to turn your hobby or something you like to do.
Personal skill
into-
or hobby or something, some interest that you have, into a business.
a revenue stream. Yeah.
And you know how you create a hobby into a business, Jim?
Well, Tom, as long as you ask, I say we treat it like a business.
No, you go up to the steps of the City Hall on the first Monday of the fiscal quarter in a full moon. And you stand up on the steps and you turn to the town you live in and say, I want to make a profit.
Ah,
Because interestingly enough, the IRS doesn't care whether you're a good business person.
no,
You just have to be sincere.
that's right.
And so when it comes to hobbies, they look at things a lot closer than they do any other business because God forbid you should be having some fun while you do
You could
this.
be riding off the boat you are fishing with and calling yourself a fishing
Yes,
guide.
or the motorhome
Ah.
that you've been going on vacations with. And
That's
I-
right.
And I've had audits on both of those things in my practice.
Yeah.
Won them both, actually.
Yeah. And why is that? Because you're
They were very intent on
making a profit.
In both cases, I'll give you one. One was avid outdoorsman. I loved it because he took me out fishing a couple times to show me his operation. So I was in the hog heaven there.
How much? Yeah, I mean, if you like
Yeah.
to fish, wouldn't that be great?
Oh yeah, and he did a guide service, and he had a lot of things that you need to do. And what the IRS does is they look at it as if this is a real business. What do real business people do?
Right.
One is they dedicate a lot of time to it,
That's
which he
right.
did. He had another job, but he also worked diligent every time he could get off, and every weekend he was taking guys out on fishing trips and hunting trips, and so he had that capital investment. He had a lot of it. I mean, the boat itself was $38,000.
Sure.
He had the greatest equipment ever. I loved going out with him. It was just a super deal.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I gave him the best business advice he got. I said, you can't be bringing low rollers like me along. You need guys that are going to tip you a couple $100 after they get a good fish or a
Yeah.
good kill.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I kind of cut myself out of the deal.
Yeah. Voted you off the island. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But when you convert a hobby into the business, so you have to say, okay, what's the IRS going to be looking at? What is their position on this? Because here's what happens. As a hobby, you get to report the income, and you get to take deductions restricted to, you don't do a Schedule C, the self-employment, you have to do it as a Schedule A itemized deductions, which is limited by 2%. So, and that's if you itemize deductions at all. So you could wind up in a situation when you're later in life and you got the house pretty well paid down, your interest rates are low, and
Like paying a lot of interest.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so your itemized deductions are pretty low, and you might not be able to get any benefits, so you have to pay income tax and all that income from the hobby
Exactly.
because you can't take the deductions. And even the deductions themselves are restricted. The ordinary necessary business deductions go on there, and up to the extent that you have earnings from the self-employment. And then they restrict things that reduce basis, like depreciation and amortization. Those sorts of things you cannot take. It cannot create a loss. It can only take you up to the amount of income. So it's a real win-win for the government and could be a real lose-lose for you as the taxpayer.
right.
But if you are a sincere, I want to make a profit,
yeah.
businessman, you can deduct all those expenses, plus maybe even get things like office and the home deductions.
I
You
was
get
about to say, yeah,
mileage.
yeah.
Oh, you were about to say
I
that,
was
right?
about to
Yeah.
say, well, I've listened to you in these programs before. When I'd wake up every 15 minutes or so and, tune in. But so really, your home office, and then, of course, your workshop,
Yeah.
if you're using it for the the primary purpose of that workshop, if that's what you're doing, if you're creating wood little widgets to sell,
Right.
say, just for an
Well,
example.
like your dream, you want to set up a woodworking
Right.
business at your place.
Exactly.
So you need, but the whole thing, they look at it and say, okay, now is this guy really in business? Or is he just trying to write off all those nice lathes and planers and sanders and stuff?
Things he likes to play
So-
with, as a hobby.
Right.
Yeah.
So what you do is you document it through different things. One of them, are you treating it like a real business? Are you keeping books and records?
Are you keeping books and records?
good books and records. They have one court case I was reading where the taxpayer loss was that he had this business and it was a lot of personal, like photography or whatever. And but unfortunately, just before the audit, there was a robbery, and the robber took the computer and all the records. But that was the only thing they took.
Oh man, what a bad break. You know, that reminds me of my high school graduation, Tom. There was a terrible fire in the records room right before, during my senior year, and they pretty much had to graduate everybody.
Oh, what?
My brother and I, were,
That's how you got it. That's why you went into law, right? You saw all this opportunity out there.
so, and what would we say legally about starting a business? Well, I would say, let's form a business. Let's either let's create a business name. Let's create a business entity.
Entity, exactly.
That now in most states they have LLCs. Some don't. Most states have small corporations. I think they all do. Most so that we can create.
And with hobbies, sometimes a small corporation can be a little bit of an advantage because they're not looked at closely, small ones, because you go into the same pool as a lot of the big boys do.
Exactly.
The highest audit risk we have in the business is a Schedule C, which is the self-employment, that shows a loss with lots of income from other sources.
Yeah.
Large wages, and so it looks like you're once again trying to write off your boat or your motor home or whatever it is
Exactly.
through the
Well,
through the
of
tax
course.
code.
And and that's exactly right. And I would think so. It's going to just shine like a beacon on a hill, isn't it? Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but you have the business name, you have the business books.
Business
I
books.
think you ought to have a business bank account.
Oh, without a doubt.
Without a doubt,
I-
you
know, I
keep
just-
everything separate. You absolutely.
Well, not only that, it looks good. It looks better, and also I always tell my clients it's a closed system so that you garnish or gather all the information into one source.
Exactly.
You have all the income coming in there. You're recording all the expenses, everything you're taking out personally. Excuse me.
Personally.
Yes, it's documented through that account, so it really tidies up your record keeping. Then all you have to worry about is business mileage
And so,
some-
if you're loaning money to that business to purchase stuff,
Oh, let's write a little
then
note and
let's
transfer
write
it
a
in.
note and have it keep it just like you were doing business.
See,
with
yeah,
them.
and when you're out there doing something like this, the better your records are, the more aggressive you can become with your deductions.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that Tom and I do show after show, and it always one of our little mantras is that the better your records are, the better you handle your cash flow, the more you know where you're at, the more aggressively you can manage your business. The more, and we don't mean that by taking outrageous risk. We don't mean that you're supposed to, do anything special, but you are in a position to know whether or not you need inventory, whether you can afford inventory, how much you can pay for things, whether you should pay for things, whether you can offer a discount, selling off some of that old inventory, that kind of thing. And you're going to have that because if you're making a little product line, you're going to find yourself with a whole bunch of these. Let's say if you're making dolls or something like that, you're going to find yourself with a whole bunch of little Lulu dolls that didn't sell. You made them and they didn't sell, and you wanted to get $100 a piece for them because they're really nice, but you couldn't. And now you need to get rid of little Lulu because they're sitting up there on the shelf and you need to deal it. But
Yeah, but getting back to the issue of the hobby, what the IRS is going to look at, because what happens is they attack it because there's losses. And
Exactly.
And when they go in there, and if they can overturn it from a business to a hobby, means that they'll disallow all those losses, and they can go back at least 3 years, and in extreme cases can go back 5 years. All those losses, all those tax savings you had for those years, assess the tax plus penalties and interest. So it can get to be really nasty very quickly, cost-wise.
oh yeah, and of course, so that's what we're talking about. But remember when we started the show, we were talking about a revenue stream. So your goal should be to determine how it is you're going to take something you like to do and have a little bit of time to do it.
Right.
Although you don't have to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning, you don't have to be there until 5 o'clock afternoon. You're going to work at it steadily, but you're not going to punch a time clock.
Normally, this issue comes up with my clients, and because they hear this thing and say, "How long can I go and lose money?"
That's the question I get all the time.
You get it all the time, and they hear, I have to make a profit in 2 years or something, and I go, no. There's what's known as the safe harbor, which is if the IRS audits you and you make profits in 2 out of 5 years, and it can't be $500 of profit and $50,000 of losses. They have to
there
be
you
reasonable.
Go. There's always some little bookkeeper in there.
But anyway, if you have 2 out of 5 years
Yeah.
showing a profit, it's a safe harbor that you're in it for profit. Now, they can overturn it on that and say, no, that's not good enough because other facts and circumstances, but you can appeal that if you have other things. And we're talking about the books and records, we're talking about having a business plan,
And you will win.
and you will win. If you got your paperwork in order, there's other things. Did you seek professional advice? And did you follow that advice?
Exactly.
See, none of my clients get it on that one.
No.
I tell them all this stuff, and they just don't pay attention
No,
at all.
and that's why
But you
you're
follow. You get professional advice. They look at other things like, have you been successful in other types of businesses? Because there's a presumption that if you did, then you have a chance of being successful in this business.
Makes sense.
If you have a flawed business plan. This is what was happening in some of the multi-level marketing programs that were being promoted out there. And they came back and said, no, it's a flawed plan. There's no way you could ever make a profit.
Yeah.
It's kind of like my pig slaughterer I got as a client when I first started in practice. And I said, why do you slaughter pigs? He's a mobile slaughterer.
Yeah.
He said, well, nobody else wants to. So I said, well, okay, how many pigs can you slaughter a day? And how much does it cost you to do this, this, and this? And I look at it, I said, well, you're losing money on every pig. I never saw him again, nor my bill. So, but
No, well, that's, he.
But, yeah.
Sometimes you just.
but it was a flawed business plan. But he was sincere about it.
Right,
And if he
no.
would have been audited, they would have allowed the
Yeah.
deduction. Because nobody slaughters pigs for fun.
No. One hopes not. The Hannibal Lecter comes to mind, doesn't it? But so we're talking about that we can lose money. We need to be organized. We need to be trying to make a profit. We really haven't talked about. We don't have much time, and we got another minute or so here in the show. But I know a lot of people are attracted to the. Let's pick on Avon, but that kind of model of, and there's
The
all
multi-level marketing.
multi-level marketing, yeah.
It's a model that I would love to see work. And the only way it can work is that if the end user, the one who's not getting into the multi-level processing of it, where you're always bringing in people, if the end user is getting benefit for the money they're buying for the product, it's got potential.
Yeah.
Most of them I see, I said, well, what can you get that product someplace else? Oh yeah, I can get it for this or that, a lot cheaper. It's whether you can make money at. Conceptually, I would love to have those work, but I've not seen one make any money in 30 years of practice.
We'll talk about that later. That's all the time we have. Good night, folks.